That brings us to our next speaker, Brother Ali Bokhari. If I could just invite him to the podium for our next speech.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Before I begin, I'd like to issue a disclaimer to free myself from hypocrisy. It's a cliche disclaimer, but nonetheless one that needs to be made. Anything I say in this speech does first and foremost apply to me, and that's because I'm not a perfect social media user, nor am I claiming to be. So, to begin, what can we define social media as? Well, in a technical sense, it's a web-based application where an individual communicates his thoughts, feelings, or life events to a community. But it's much more than that. As we all know, it's a global village, global in terms of the whole world, and village, a tight, compacted space of living. With one click of a finger, I can now talk to someone completely on the other side of the world, be it North America, Australia, South America, wherever it may be, make myself known, my community known, and my cause known. So it's a power to every civilian that we now have today that no other generation in humankind has ever had. Now, with any power, there needs to be boundaries or restrictions, because if there isn't, then it ends up doing more bad than good. So in terms of boundaries, what would I say is the overarching question to ask yourself when using social media? And I think it's that, would I do this in real life? Because a lot of the time we see on social media comments of hate, some things where you think, what's going on here? Why is someone saying something so abrupt and rude? And I think it's because in real life we're subjected to pressures. Social pressures, religious pressures, community pressures. Now, pressures is usually a word that's got quite a negative connotation, but I'm using it in a positive sense. Why? Well, let me give you an example. If you're in a family gathering, you will show respect to your elders. That's a family pressure, which is enforcing good manners. That's a good thing, right? So on social media, your mannerisms count, because just because it's virtual does not mean that the same rules of real life don't apply. Likewise, some people make jokes on social media and, choosing what to tweet and what to post on Facebook. Asking yourself, would I do this in real life, can give you a bit of a boundary on what you're going to say. So, for example, recently we saw that 14-year-old Dutch girl, who I'm sure many of you read on the news, who tweeted American Air and said, I have something big planned for this flight. Now, I'm not sure why she said that, but in real life context, would she have gone to the American Air check-in counter and said to her, said to the person behind the counter, I've got something big planned for the flight? Obviously not. So again, it's about asking yourself, would I do this in real life? Now, I think the reason why we see such atrocious things on social media and online is because the internet itself creates a barrier. So right now, I'm speaking, and I hope you guys are listening, and there's an emotional connection between us, right? There's an emotional connection, there's an energy. I'm seeing who's agreeing, I'm seeing who's disagreeing, I'm seeing who's bored, I'm seeing who's interested, and I'm reacting off what I'm seeing you guys as the listeners. But on social media, that barrier between the speaker and listener is taken away. The speaker no longer has the same emotional connection to the listener that he would have in real life. Whereas I think the listener has the exact same emotional reaction that they would online to real life. So again, it's about asking yourself, would I do this in real life? And in terms of putting a boundary on yourself in this aspect, how is the person going to react who's seeing what I'm saying? Now, moreover, social media itself has created somewhat of a split personality in all of us. It's created another dimension, right? It's virtual, but it's still very much like real life. So, for example, how many people of you know people on social media who are completely different online to how they are in real life, and completely different in real life to how they are online? Social media gives a lot of people bravery. It gives them, because they're behind a screen, they think they're entitled to say things they wouldn't say in real life. I know a lot of people in here, for example, many of you, we're talking about behind closed doors, it happens. A lot of people argue on social media. Many people in this room might have argued with each other, right? But in real life, you're going to completely avoid each other because a barrier is put up between you. Now, that's not necessarily a good thing, and I think it's imperative for everyone to settle the differences in real life how they would online. Now, leading on from this whole two-dimensional personality, we often make fun of people that have a lot of different interests and express them all online. So, for example, I know a lot of people here make a lot of jokes on social media, but then as soon as they talk about a social issue, everyone has a problem with it and says they shouldn't be talking about this. Now, I think this is something that we've taken from real life and we've restricted ourselves on social media. Now, what I mean by this is that in real life, we are temporally restricted. We're restricted by time. So right now, you're only seeing one side of me. You're seeing the Ali that's talking about social media in quite a serious light. Whereas if I go out with my friends later, I'm going to be joking around, and I'm going to be joking because that's how I act with my friends. But on social media, you can see 1 week of someone's life and all their thought processes and what they've spoken about in the space of 1 week, and sometimes we think it's a contradictory personality. But that's not the case at all. In fact, since we use social media and we're in the age of information, where if I have a topic that I want to know about, I can just type it in, I get 10 different articles on it. It's our duty to be educated in politics, in technology, in history. We should be educated in all these areas, and we should be sharing it on a platform such as social media, where our reach is thousands and thousands. A quote comes to mind. I don't want to classify as a hadith because I haven't really checked it myself. However, it's attributed to the Prophet, where he says, the tax of knowledge is sharing it. Knowledge can be considered a wealth. You pay tax on a wealth. The tax of knowledge is sharing it. The best place to share knowledge is on social media, where your reach is to thousands of people at any one given time. So in terms of a restriction or a boundary here, I would say lift one from yourself. Be consistent in who you are. We're all interested in many different areas. We all have knowledge on many different areas. And I think it's important for us to all express them all as a consistent personality and not have capricious personalities where we're acting as one thing in 1 second and the next day we're being completely different. Now, in terms of boundaries again, I think there's certain boundaries we don't always think about because, again, of that barrier where we don't see how the person listening is going to react. So, for example, now a lot of you will disagree with what I have to say, and in fact, within me, there's a bit of an internal struggle. I'm not completely sure what I'm about to say is 100% true, but it's something I try to live by when using social media. And it's that, how would someone react when they see what you say? Now, this is specific to certain people. So there's hadith which say, for example, don't talk about your wealth in front of a poor person, or don't talk about your parents in front of an orphan. And I think sometimes on social media, we don't realize just how many people see what we have to say. So think to yourself, if someone in a contrary position to what I'm proposing is to read my tweet or my Facebook post, how are they going to react? So for example, how is the orphan going to react when they see me talking about how amazing my parents are? Now, of course, we all want to express how amazing our parents are, but I think it's important to think about those people who aren't in the same position as you, and you could potentially ruin their day by doing so. Now, where we need to impose a boundary, or where I would say we need to impose a boundary, is on the privacy social media gives you. The privacy social media gives you, I think, is honestly one of the most dangerous things that face our generation, and it has the possibility to completely disintegrate our generation, because now, by ticking an anonymous box on certain websites, you can be completely anonymous and no one will know what you're saying. Or you can create an anonymous profile, no one will know it's you. And anonymity can be used in a good way. Let me just clarify that first. For example, if you're doing good deeds and you don't want people to notice you, being anonymous is a good thing. But on social media, when it's used to spread hate, and it's used to accuse people, and it's used to spread rumors, the privacy is obviously a very bad thing. Now, it's a very extreme case. Like, we think it's, ticking an anonymous box is, it's harmless or whatever. It's not harmless at all. In fact, there's been suicides over a certain website called Ask FM, in which someone sets up a profile and anyone can ask them questions, tick an anonymous box, and no one will know it's you. Now, unfortunately, people that use this website, and again, we're talking about behind closed doors. These things happen online, and I don't think it's going to help anybody by just ignoring the fact that it happens. But the amount of abuse some innocent people get on these websites is absolutely disgusting. Some people, and I hate to play the accusatory tone here, but some people must have a real disease in their heart if some of the things I've read on that website can come from a human being to another. Why is it that we want to see people in our own community, people we're supposed to be supporting, people we're supposed to be pushing forward, why is it that we want to see them crushed? Why is it we want to see their morale, their self-esteem completely crushed? Just because we have some inner gaping hole of insecurity within us? Now, because social media, like I said, it's a power, and it has to be regulated. And privacy itself has to be regulated. Because why? Because the pressures we spoke about earlier don't apply when you're in private. Right? The social pressures, religious pressures, family pressures, they don't apply in private. That's why Islam is red hot on God consciousness. Why? Because when you're in private and you have privacy, the only thing that will stop you from committing immoral acts is that there is something above you that can stop you. There is something above you that you are accountable to. So the only thing I can say, despite it being cliche, is when you are in private, know that there is a Lord watching what you're doing. Every letter you type, every message you send, every image you look at. Everything you do online be it virtual, you are still subject to the same laws that you are in real life. We know a lot of groups that are created on WhatsApp, for example, screenshots sent around, and people mocked behind their back. What is that short of backbiting? But we think because it's in a virtual world, we're not accountable or we're not subject to the same laws. We think because we tick an anonymous box because the person doesn't know it's you, God doesn't know it's you. When you're accountable for everything that you do online, like I said, every image you look at, every message you send, think before yourself. Before you tweet anything, before you post anything. You know, in real life we say, think before you speak. Well, I argue the same, think before you tweet. Because at the end of the day, anything you say can have an instant impact on someone, and the person listening will have exactly the same reaction as they do in real life. So whether you are a holder of an anonymous account and you're using that to slander people or to promote immorality, or you're taking an anonymous box and you're creating fraternization or any other immorality that you're spreading online, and the immorality that you spread online will spread much further and farther than the immorality that you spread in real life, because it goes out to millions of people, thousands of people at any one given time. Now I'd like to end with a quote, again attributed to Imam Ali alayhi salam, and this is especially in regards to people that are using the anonymity and the privacy that social media gives you for immoral acts and things that perhaps they wouldn't do in real life. And I think it's very obvious they wouldn't do it in real life, otherwise they wouldn't click the anonymous box. If you were comfortable with what you were doing, there'd be no need to make it anonymous. In fact, anonymity and using anonymity to spread hate is nothing short of cowardice. So Imam Ali alayhi salam says, beware of your actions that you perform in private, because the witness is also the judge. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.